The handcuffs bit into my wrists, on my own ranch, mind you, and I could hear her screaming from the property line. "Vagrant camping! It's illegal! You're destroying community standards, Mr. Tucker." She didn't know I was the damn county sheriff. And honestly, in that moment, seeing my own deputy apologize as he cuffed me, all I could think was, "Oh, Vivian, you just crossed the wrong Texan on the wrong Friday night. Picture this." Right, I'm Sheriff Jake Tanner, 8 years in, and I inherited this 40-acre slice of heaven down here in Red River County, the Lazy T Ranch. It's been in my family since 1948, long before the first asphalt hit the ground for the meadows at Sycamore Creek, that new, pristine subdivision that sprouted up like a fungal infection right along my eastern fence line. My sanctuary, my clear spring-fed pond where the bass practically jump on the hook. That's my therapy after a week dealing with meth labs and accidents that stick to your soul like old road tar. I'd just pitched my grandfather's canvas tent, the scent of mesquite smoke starting to mix with the clean water smell, when suddenly 3 flashlights hit me, blinding me instantly. It was my newest deputy, bless his heart, looking horrified. "Sheriff, I am so sorry, sir," he stammered, his young face pale. "We got a complaint. Suspicious transient activity threatening property values." It was Ms. Vivian Stone, sir. Vivian Stone, 55 years old. Arrived in her white Mercedes SUV 2 years ago from Scottsdale, Arizona, with perfectly styled blonde hair and a blessed and highly favored license plate frame that didn't fool anyone. Within 6 months, she'd muscled her way into becoming president of the Meadows HOA, promising to bring proper governance to our slice of rural Texas. My property, the Lazy T, predates her HOA by 40 years. But that never stopped a Karen, right? She stood by her Lexus, filming me with her phone, her smug smirk catching the light. "Rules apply to everyone, Sheriff, even vagrants with a fishing pole." The word vagrant felt like she spat it at me. I tell you, rage burned. I wasn't just a homeowner, I was the county sheriff, and this woman's relentless harassment over me camping on my own land had become a serious time-consuming problem. It started subtly. First, she served me an official violation notice, zip-tied to a clipboard like a federal indictment, $750 fine, 7-day compliance deadline. The charge? Non-conforming rustic structures affecting community aesthetic. I laughed right in her face. "Ma'am," I said, tipping my old hat with exaggerated politeness, "this is the Lazy T. My grandfather stared down the IRS on this spot. Your HOA rules don't apply here." Her smile didn't waver, that icy predator's smile. "Paperwork can be complicated, Sheriff. Wouldn't want any complaints about law enforcement professionalism reaching the county commissioners, would we?" That was the threat, plain as day. "Play ball, or we torpedo your career." I spent the next week juggling meth arrests and paperwork from the county planning office, the environmental agency, and even the State Water Commission, all blowing up my phone with official inquiries, all triggered by Vivian. She was relentless, documenting my every move, taking telephoto shots of my barn and my campsite. Deputy Martinez, my tech guy, showed me her social media. She was posting me as the local sheriff who thinks his badge puts him above community standards. It was toxic, anti-law enforcement garbage. But then, one post crossed the line. Sometimes you have to make examples of people who think they're untouchable. This sheriff is about to learn that lesson the hard way. That's when I stopped thinking like an annoyed homeowner and started thinking like a cop with a personal stake in justice. Bull Tanner didn't raise a quitter, and 8 years in law enforcement taught me one thing. Paper trails don't lie. And everybody has a secret if you know where to look. I dusted off my boots and spent a whole morning in the county archives, digging through maps and zoning codes that smelled like old leather and forgotten promises. What I found made me grin like a possum eating persimmons. The meadows at Sycamore Creek, Vivian's perfect little development, had a dirty secret. 3 houses, including hers, violated the mandatory creek setback requirements by 15 to 25 feet. They were sitting smack dab in a flood easement, illegal as a $3 bill. Even better, internal documents showed the developer knew and had paid off a corrupt planning clerk years ago. Vivian wasn't a victim of poor planning. She was one of the perpetrators. But the real revelation came when my ex-wife, Sarah, called me out of the blue. Sarah's a corporate defense attorney, sharp as a tack and smelled legal blood in the water. "Rex," she said, cutting right to the chase, "I looked up Vivian Stone. This isn't just a Texas thing. It's a pattern." She pulled favors, used her firm's access to civil court databases, and what she uncovered made my jaw drop. 3 prior addresses: Phoenix, Scottsdale, and Reno. 3 separate HOA disputes. Same playbook every single time. Move in, seize the board, systematically harass vulnerable owners, a widow, a single parent, an old vet, until they sell cheap. Then those properties would mysteriously be flipped for huge profits, often financed by the same small mortgage company. "Rex," Sarah said, spreading printed documents across my kitchen table like a treasure map to fraud. "Vivian's brother-in-law owns the mortgage company financing every single distressed purchase in her previous neighborhoods. This isn't control, Jake. This is systematic property theft disguised as community improvement." That's when it clicked. This wasn't about my tent or my fishing. This was about cold, hard cash. Vivian wasn't just a control freak. She was running an organized crime ring with an HOA uniform. We estimated over $2 million in fraudulent profits across 5 years in 3 states. And my ranch? If the Lazy T was ever officially surveyed or developed, it would automatically trigger a review that would expose the zoning violations on her property, leading to demolition orders and federal charges. Vivian needed my land either empty or under HOA control to prevent her entire criminal enterprise from collapsing. She thought she was bullying a stubborn camper. She had actually declared war on the wrong sheriff with a personal stake in the truth. The game was on, and I went full sheriff. While Vivian hired a terrifying-looking ex-Houston cop named Burke to cruise my property like a steroid-fueled gargoyle, my team went to work. Sarah compiled the financial evidence, money laundering through shell companies and $60,000 in HOA fund theft. Martinez traced their digital conspiracy through private social media groups, finding actual training manuals for targeting uncooperative residents. These amateurs had literally written the textbook for property fraud. The community, my community, rallied. Mrs. Elena Rios, the elderly widow Vivian had targeted over unmaintained landscaping after her husband passed, found the courage to speak up. Marco Sanchez, the young mechanic cited for working on his classic Camaro, added his testimony. The pattern was undeniable. Target the vulnerable, force a cheap sale, profit from community destruction. The VFW offered legal support. Vivian, meanwhile, doubled down on the crazy. She called an emergency HOA meeting to vote no confidence in local law enforcement, demanding the county hire private security, her private militia, because the sheriff's department was compromised. Then came her fatal error, 3 days before, her big showdown with the county commissioners, where she planned to publicly humiliate me and demand my suspension. Vivian called a press conference. She convinced Channel 7 from Dallas to drive 2 hours for her David versus Goliath. Community leader fights, corrupt sheriff spectacle. She was dressed in a white power suit, dabbing at non-existent tears, spinning a tale of victimization. But while she was performing, I got a call. Burke, her hired muscle, had been arrested for drunk driving the night before and immediately started singing to save his skin, implicating Vivian and her entire scheme. The press conference imploded when the Channel 7 reporter, a sharp woman named Rodriguez, started asking questions about the HOA's missing $60,000 and the pattern of lowball property purchases. Vivian melted down on live TV, doubling down with wild conspiracy theories. It was glorious. I let her self-destruct. We waited until the county commissioner meeting, the stage she had chosen for her victory, for the final act. The main hearing room was packed, tighter than a honky-tonk on a Saturday night. Vivian sat at the front table with her high-priced lawyer, wearing a grim, practiced victim expression. I sat across from her in full uniform, badge gleaming, with Sarah and my evidence binders stacked like artillery. Vivian's lawyer gave his theatrical speech about accountability and abuse of power. Vivian took the microphone, her voice trembling with manufactured emotion. "This sheriff, she declared, looking straight at the cameras, has used his badge to intimidate and harass law-abiding citizens who simply want to maintain community standards. Commissioner Hendricks turned to me. Sheriff Tanner, how do you respond? I stood up slowly, walked to the microphone, and the entire room fell silent, the only sound the clicking of press cameras. Commissioner, I'll address these charges directly. But first, this community deserves to know the whole truth about what we're really dealing with here. I pulled out the financial documents. Mrs. Stone claims this is about community standards. The evidence tells a different story. I spread charts of bank records and shell companies across the table. Over the past 5 years, Mrs. Stone has operated a systematic property fraud scheme across 5 states: Arizona, Nevada, Oregon, Colorado, and now Texas. She's stolen over $60,000 from her own HOA members to fund harassment campaigns designed to intimidate our elderly neighbors into selling their homes for below-market prices. The gasps from the Meadowbrook residents were audible. They had been unknowingly financing their own victimization. But here's where it gets interesting, I continued, pulling out Burke's signed confession. She hired former Officer Burke, who was arrested this week and chose to cooperate with federal investigators rather than face decades in prison for conspiracy charges. Vivian shot to her feet. This is a fabrication! Character assassination! That's when FBI agent Thompson stood up from the back of the room, his voice cutting through the chaos like a whip. Mrs. Vivian Stone, he announced, you are under arrest for mail fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy to commit racketeering, theft of community funds, and criminal threats against a law enforcement officer. The dead silence of justice finally arriving fell over the courtroom. Federal agents moved in from both sides, and as the cold metal clicked around Vivian's wrists, she kept screaming, "This is a setup! Corruption! You can't do this to me!" Burke, already cuffed, was led in and pointed directly at her for the cameras. She paid me to threaten him and half a dozen other property owners. Got it all on tape. Rodriguez from Channel 7 pushed her microphone in my face. Sheriff Tanner, how does it feel to be vindicated? This was never about me, I replied, looking out at the faces of Mrs. Rios and Marco, who were crying tears of relief. This was about protecting our community from predators who use the mask of authority to steal from vulnerable people. Today, justice won. 6 months later, I'm back on the lazy T, sitting by the lake where this nightmare started. Vivian pleaded guilty to 8 federal counts and got 5 years in prison, plus a hefty restitution order. Her crime network was dismantled across 5 states. The real victory, though, was watching Red River County heal. Vivian's foreclosed mansion became affordable housing for elderly residents. Mrs. Rios teaches neighborhood kids to fish on the new community pier funded by local businesses. Sarah and I rebuilt our friendship, and she now runs a legal clinic specializing in HOA abuse cases nationwide. Sometimes defending your ground means protecting everyone's ground. I got my sanctuary back, but I also got a stronger community. But you know, as a sheriff, the job never really ends. Martinez just texted me an hour ago. Sheriff, interesting case in the next county. City council member, suspicious zoning changes. Sound familiar? Yeah, it does. That's another story for another day. For now, I'm watching the sunset and listening to the water lap against the shore. Tell me, what's your worst HOA nightmare? Was it about power, money, or just plain neighborly? Hate? Did justice ever win in your town? Drop your wildest story below. Let's talk about the fine line between community oversight and criminal tyranny, and what it truly means to fight for your property rights here in America. Hit subscribe and let me know. Was I right to use my badge to dismantle this crime ring, or should I have just stayed the homeowner? Let the debate begin.
Welcome to HOA Stories, where inspiration transforms into life strength. These are not just stories. They are your daily dose of spiritual medicine. HOA. HOA. Stories Volume. We curate resonant journeys, profound lessons, and extraordinary victories from around the world. Each video is meticulously designed to uplift your spirit, ignite your passion, and provide the most practical insights for your breakthrough development. Whether you are overcoming adversity, pursuing a big dream, or simply need a kind act to restore your faith in life, we are here to affirm. Every challenge contains a lesson, and every limit can be broken. Don't just watch, take action. Join us in exploring and enriching your life today. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications to receive a daily source of inspiration and motivation.